We all navigate it every single day. That pervasive feeling of being constantly on. It's a state we call chronic stress. But what is it actually doing to our health, and how can we build true resilience against it? Let's find out. Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep into something we all navigate every single day: stress. That pervasive feeling of being constantly on in our modern world, you know?
Yes, that low-grade thrum, the feeling of being constantly evaluated or measured. It's a state we often call chronic stress, and its dysregulation has been linked to, well, virtually every disease condition known.
Wow. And a major player in this picture is cortisol, the stress hormone.
The key stress hormone, yes. The critical insight here is that because stress is so deeply woven into our lifestyle, how we eat, how we sleep, how we interact, truly reducing its impact fundamentally requires changing that lifestyle.
You can't just wish it away. It seems we need to go beyond just the buzzword stress and explore the core science of how it all works.
Exactly. We need to understand the wide-ranging impacts of chronic elevation, and most importantly, pull out comprehensive, actionable solutions. It's about building a holistic system, a set of habits and practices that foster genuine resilience.
A system, I like that. It sounds like a roadmap for how our body responds to stress, the physical and mental impacts, and a suite of practical strategies. Where do we start?
Let's start at the very beginning. What exactly is stress from a physiological standpoint?
Yeah, what's happening inside?
Stress isn't just an emotion, it's a physiological response originating in your nervous system, specifically, the sympathetic nervous system. It's part of your autonomic nervous system, the body's master control panel.
The automatic stuff?
Exactly. It manages functions like breathing, heart rate, and digestion. The sympathetic part is the famous fight-or-flight system. Its primary role is to respond powerfully to threats, whether they're physical, like actual danger, or perceived,
like the classic tiger example, or a challenging email.
Right. Your body doesn't always differentiate well initially. The physiological response is very similar. When activated, it triggers a rapid rev-up across your body. Your heart rate accelerates, blood pressure spikes, and muscles tense up.
You feel it. And where does cortisol fit into this initial acute response? Is it immediate like adrenaline?
It's part of the cascade but slightly slower. Cortisol is released by the adrenal glands, and its main job in this moment is to raise your blood sugar. It mobilizes glucose from storage, providing that essential energy your muscles and brain need for the fight-or-flight action.
Quick fuel. Okay, so that's the sympathetic rev-up side. What about the other half of this autonomic equation?
That's the parasympathetic nervous system.
Rest and digest.
That's the one. Its functions are essentially the opposite. It promotes digestion, modulates immune responses, and is crucial for healing and repair. The critical point is the balance between these two systems. You can activate the sympathetic system to defend yourself, or the parasympathetic system to heal, but you cannot effectively do both optimally at the same time. One dials up, the other dials down.
Which means the stress response itself isn't inherently a bad thing. It sounds necessary.
Not at all. The sympathetic nervous system is absolutely life-saving. It's designed as a generic system to mobilize the brain and body in response to any perceived threat. The problem in modern life is chronic stress. Unlike the acute bursts our ancestors faced, modern life often leads to constant low-grade sympathetic activation.
It just doesn't switch off.
Doesn't get a chance to. We are biologically designed for bursts of maybe 10 to 20% of our time in sympathetic mode, with the vast majority, 80 to 90%, spent in the parasympathetic state for rest, but our current way of living often reverses this. We get stuck in sympathetic dominance.
And why is being stuck in that state so destructive for our health?
Because the very things the sympathetic system drives, high heart rate, elevated blood pressure, sustained high cortisol, become a chronic habit. This persistent state of being contributes directly to the development of chronic degenerative diseases, like heart disease, diabetes, and immune issues.
And it sounds like stressor is a broader term than just feeling worried.
That's a critical point. Stress isn't solely initiated by emotional factors. Anytime your sympathetic nervous system is activated beyond its baseline, you're experiencing a stress response. This can be triggered by chemical factors, like fighting an infection or unstable blood sugar.
Like when your blood sugar dips too low?
Yes, your body perceives that as a threat and releases cortisol to bring it back up. Then there are mechanical or structural factors, like being sedentary for long periods or poor posture. And finally, the emotional factors we think of most often: fear, anger, overwhelm, and financial worries. These are all powerful activators.
So it's like a triangle: chemical, structural, and emotional. To create balance, you need to address all three sides.
Precisely. And this is key to understanding the solutions. Your brain is the command center, specifically your frontal lobe. It's responsible for higher-level thinking and plays a crucial role in managing the stress response. When functioning well, it can appraise a situation and signal that a threat has passed, turning the stress response off.
But if the frontal lobe isn't working well due to fatigue or poor nutrition,
then stress responses can go on stronger and for much longer than they should. The off switch is faulty. It's not just willpower, it's brain function. By turning off the sympathetic response, the frontal lobe gives permission for the calming parasympathetic system to activate.
like a seesaw. So, turning off fight or flight turns on rest and digest?
Indirectly, yes. By controlling that off switch, you learn how to actively control stress.
Okay. Let's dive deeper into that immediate acute stress response then. Lay it out for us physiologically.
When a stressor is perceived, it triggers a rapid chain reaction, activating what's called the sympathetic chain ganglia, nerve bundles that run along your spine. This is the main switchboard. It activates in milliseconds. This leads to the chemical cascade of adrenaline.
And from there?
Activated neurons release acetylcholine, which acts on another set of neurons that reach out to your various organs. These neurons then release the primary hormone in this rapid response, epinephrine.
Which is adrenaline. And you mentioned it's a two-pronged action?
Yes. Adrenaline acts like two different keys opening two different doors. Prong 1 is activating the systems you need for immediate action. Receptors in your muscles and heart bind with adrenaline, causing blood vessels to widen, directing more blood flow towards them. Your heart beats faster and stronger.
Makes sense. And the second prong?
The other prong affects non-essential systems. It constricts blood vessels supplying areas like digestion and reproduction. That's why your stomach might feel like it's in knots when you're highly stressed. Blood is being shunted elsewhere.
So the resulting state is this weird mix of hyperactivation in some areas and shutdown in others, which creates that feeling of agitation.
Yes, a fundamental physiological push from your brainstem to do something. That's why if you try to suppress movement when you're highly stressed, you often feel an inner tremor. Your body is physiologically primed for action.
Okay. Let's shift gears now and talk about the impacts of stress over different timescales. You mentioned they're not all bad.
That's right, the impacts vary dramatically. Short-term or acute stress, which happens in the moment, can actually be beneficial.
How so? That seems counterintuitive.
Acute stress is often good for your immune system in the short term. Stress often arises in response to an infection or injury, and the stress response itself helps combat it, priming your immune system to fight. It also sharpens focus.
It does. I've heard it called tunnel vision.
Yes, stress narrows your visual field, helping you intensely focus on the immediate environment. It also primes your system for better thinking in a crisis, enabling what's known as duration path outcome analysis.
Can you break that down?
It's your brain rapidly calculating possibilities and consequences. If I run this way, what's the path? How long will it take? What's the probable result? It's a rapid, scenario-based analysis fueled by the stress response. It acts almost like a powerful natural nootropic, or smart drug.
But the crucial caveat here, again, is being able to turn it off back when the task is done.
That is the absolute key. The benefit comes from the activation, and then the effective return to baseline, back to parasympathetic dominance.
That explains why people often get sick right when they go on vacation.
Exactly. After a sustained period of intense work stress, when you finally relax completely, that chronic, low-level adrenaline response you've been running on suddenly crashes. And with it, that temporary stress-induced priming of your immune system also drops.
So you become vulnerable. Okay, so acute stress has its uses. What about medium-term and the big one, chronic stress?
Medium-term stress is where you're dealing with sustained periods of activation that aren't resolving immediately. Think exams or a difficult work project. This is where your individual stress threshold comes into play, but chronic long-term stress that goes on for months or years, that is unequivocally detrimental. There are zero upsides.
Why is it so bad? Why especially cortisol?
While adrenaline is the fast actor, cortisol is the one that sticks around longer and has more widespread, slow-burning systemic effects. Let's walk through some of those impacts, starting with the brain.
What does chronic stress do to our brains?
It's not good. Chronic stress has significant negative effects on brain structure and function. Over time, it can lead to changes that make the brain appear somewhat withered under imaging. And crucially, the hippocampus, a region essential for memory and learning, physically shrinks.
That explains brain fog under stress.
It's a major contributor. Chronic stress also worsens the progression of neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's, increases the incidence of schizophrenia episodes in predisposed individuals, and is a major factor in addiction relapse. Stress makes the brain more vulnerable.
And the cardiovascular system?
Chronic stress is a major driver of chronic hypertension. This is due to adrenaline's persistent effects constricting blood vessels and cortisol contributing to the problem. This chronic high blood pressure significantly damages blood vessels and increases the risk of heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes.
And the immune system gets the opposite effect of the short-term boost.
Exactly the opposite. Chronic stress leads to immunosuppression. Your immune system becomes less effective, less regulated. Infections take much longer to clear. Paradoxically, while it suppresses helpful immune responses, it can also increase chronic low-grade inflammation throughout the body as the system becomes dysregulated.
So it's suppression and inflammation. That sounds terrible.
It's a bad combination. Fertility and reproductive health also suffer, as reproduction is a luxury function that the body downregulates during a perceived chronic threat.
You also mentioned cortisol affects our metabolism and blood sugar.
Yes, cortisol is a glucocorticoid, gluco for glucose. It directly influences glucose metabolism. Chronically high cortisol increases gluconeogenesis in the liver.
Making new sugar?
Exactly. Your liver starts making glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, like amino acids from protein, which can mean breaking down muscle tissue over time. Your body is desperately trying to provide readily available energy, which shifts your metabolism towards relying on glucose and drives up insulin levels, significantly increasing the risk of insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes.
And our cholesterol.
In chronic stress, the whole profile tends to worsen. Triglycerides increase, HDL, good cholesterol, decreases, and the small dense type of LDL, bad cholesterol, increases, which is more likely to contribute to plaque buildup and hardening of the arteries.
It even impairs detoxification, right? How does that work?
Yes, this is an often overlooked issue. Key enzyme systems in your liver, which is your primary detoxification organ, are inhibited by chronic stress and high cortisol. It means your body becomes less efficient at processing and eliminating toxins, from pesticides in your environment to internally produced waste products. They can build up and contribute to more inflammation and fatigue.
And this affects digestion and nutrient absorption too.
Chronically, digestion slows down dramatically. The body reduces the release of crucial digestive aids like bile salts and stomach acid, Lower stomach acid impairs protein digestion and reduces the absorption of essential minerals like calcium, magnesium, and iron. It also lessens your ability to kill off pathogens in your food.
So you might be eating well, but not getting the full benefit.
Exactly. Even the function of the vitamin D receptor on your cells is diminished by chronic stress. So even if your vitamin D levels look okay on a blood test, your body might not be able to utilize it properly at the cellular level.
I've also heard stress physically manifests as tight fascia, that connective tissue.
That's right. The fascia becomes tighter and more restricted under chronic stress. It's part of a physical armoring response, which can lead to reduced range of motion and feelings of stiffness. Your body is physically locking down into a protect mode.
Before we move to solutions, can you clarify adrenal burnout? Is it real?
The idea of adrenal glands simply running out of juice from chronic stress is largely considered a myth in mainstream endocrinology. The adrenal glands are incredibly resilient. The profound fatigue people experience is more about the signaling becoming dysregulated, the brain continuing to send stress signals, or the body's receptors becoming less sensitive to the hormones. The problem is usually higher up the chain, in the brain and nervous system, not the glands themselves failing.
Thank you for clarifying that. Now, the most critical part: actionable solutions. How do we actually manage chronic stress? Hey everyone, just a quick pause here. If you're finding this deep dive into the science of stress helpful, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment to support the channel. When you like this video, leave a comment and share it with someone who might benefit. It sends a powerful signal to the YouTube algorithm that this is valuable content. That tells YouTube to share it with more people who might need to see it. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. It's the best way to support WellthSync and ensures you won't miss our future deep dives. Thank you so much. It truly helps more than you know. Okay, let's get back to it.
You're right, simply trying to mentally calm down when your physiology is screaming threat is often ineffective. Real control comes from learning to directly activate the calming systems using physiological levers, body-based tools that work with your body's wiring.
How does that work, the mechanics?
It's quite direct. The movement of your diaphragm as you breathe changes the physical space in your chest cavity, which slightly changes the size and volume of your heart. Stretch receptors in and around the heart detect this change and send a signal directly to your heart's natural pacemaker, and also up to the control centers in your brainstem.
So breathing directly talks to the heart's control center?
Directly. When you inhale, it stretches the heart slightly, signaling the brain stem to let the heart speed up. When you exhale, the pressure releases, signaling the brain stem to increase parasympathetic activity and slow the heart down.
Wow. So, inhale speeds up, exhale slows down. And there's a specific technique for this, the physiological sigh?
Yes, it's arguably the fastest, most physiologically grounded tool you have to quickly reduce stress. It's a double inhale, typically through the nose, followed by a long, slow, complete exhale through the mouth.
A double inhale, like sniff sniff. Why two?
A double inhale is the absolute key. During stress, tiny air sacs in your lungs called alveoli can collapse. A single inhale might not be enough to pop them back open. That second inhale creates enough pressure to reinflate those collapsed alveoli, dramatically increasing the usable surface area in your lungs.
And getting rid of CO2 is calming.
Rapidly reducing CO2 in your bloodstream sends a very powerful, immediate signal to your brainstem that the threat has passed, promoting relaxation and shifting your nervous system towards the parasympathetic side. It's a very efficient reset.
And this is something you can do right in the moment. Are there any safety considerations?
Several crucial ones. While slowing your heart rate is the goal, you don't want it to drop too fast, especially if you have underlying conditions, as this can cause dizziness, so ease into any new practice. But the most critical safety warning is to never do any form of deliberate breathwork, especially involving breath holds, anywhere near water.
Why near water specifically?
Because if you were to faint from the breathwork, even in shallow water like a bathtub, the risk of drowning is tragically high. Always on dry land, ideally sitting or lying down initially. And always consult a qualified healthcare professional before starting any new breathwork practice if you have underlying medical conditions.
Good advice. Aside from that, does just making your exhale longer than your inhale help?
Yes, that's a simple and effective principle. Consciously making your exhales longer and slower than your inhales promotes calming and activates the parasympathetic system. You could simply repeat a pattern: inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 8, for maybe 10 to 15 cycles.
Okay, so those are real-time tools. What about managing stress over the medium term, training our resilience?
The goal here is to increase your capacity to remain functional and regulated, even during sustained stress, to be alert and calm simultaneously.
That sounds like a superpower. How?
One concept is consciously training yourself to relax your mind while your body is in a state of high activation, like during intense exercise. It's learning to decouple the physical sensation of activation from the mental state of distress, building a mental resilience muscle. Another technique involves changing how we use our vision.
You mentioned tunnel vision earlier.
Yes. Stress naturally narrows your conscious focus. The solution is to deliberately use gaze dilation, or panoramic vision. Becoming aware of your peripheral vision, taking in more of your environment without focusing intently on any one thing. Seeing the big picture visually activates a brain stem circuit associated with calmness and safety.
Fascinating. Just changing where you look.
Or rather, how you look. We can also build resilience by intentionally, but very safely, inducing the acute stress response. It's like a vaccination for stress.
What kind of techniques?
Techniques like rapid deliberate breathing, similar to Wim Hof or Tummo breathing. These involve cycles of deep, fast inhales and exhales, which blows off CO2 and then, during a breath hold, liberates a significant amount of adrenaline and cortisol in a controlled burst. This mimics the fight or flight surge and can help people consciously combat the effects of a simulated infection, showing a direct link to that acute stress immune boost.
But the safety warnings apply here especially.
Absolutely paramount. Never near water. Always consult a doctor first. And be acutely aware of contraindications. It's not for everyone. Start slowly. Listen to your body.
What else counts as controlled acute stress?
Cold exposure is another major one, like taking cold showers or ice baths. Getting into cold water triggers a significant, rapid release of adrenaline and norepinephrine. Again, it mimics the physiological stress response in a controlled environment. It helps train your body's tolerance to discomfort and is linked to improved immune function and reduced inflammation.
So brief, intense, controlled stress can make you better at handling other stress.
That's the principle, yes. Building resilience through hormesis, beneficial adaptation to small doses of stress.
Okay. Moving to the really long-term view. Mitigating chronic stress seems to rely heavily on consistent lifestyle and environmental habits. These are the foundations.
These form the absolute bedrock. You can use all the acute tools you want, but if the foundations aren't solid, you'll constantly be fighting an uphill battle.
So what are the non-negotiables? Exercise.
Regular physical exercise is crucial. It helps your body metabolize and flush out stress hormones. It also positively impacts sleep quality, boosts mood through endorphins, and physically shifts your body's energy and resources away from the mental stress response loop and towards physical repair.
And sleep is mentioned again as absolutely critical.
Absolutely vital, non-negotiable. Sleep is your body's primary time for physical repair, brain detoxification, memory consolidation, and hormonal balancing. Getting sufficient deep sleep increases the release of growth hormone, which has beneficial restorative effects and works in direct opposition to cortisol. Cortisol is catabolic. it breaks down. Growth hormone is anabolic, it builds up.
So we need enough sleep, but also regularity.
The amount of sleep matters, but so does consistency in your sleep schedule. And nutrition plays a significant role, especially concerning blood sugar stability. Unstable blood sugar is a major physiological stressor that directly stimulates cortisol release.
Are there specific nutrients that are particularly important?
Beyond stable energy, yes. Certain nutrients are essential cofactors. Vitamin D3 is crucial. B vitamins are heavily involved in energy metabolism and neurotransmitter synthesis. Key minerals like magnesium, potassium, and calcium have known calming effects. And essential fatty acids, specifically DHA, are crucial for brain cell membrane health.
Okay. Foundations: exercise, sleep, stable nutrition. What about specific mind-body practices beyond just general lifestyle?
Practices that intentionally bridge the connection between mind and body help regulate the nervous system more directly. Yoga is mentioned frequently. It acts as a powerful pattern interrupt, pulling you out of stressful thought loops. The physical postures and breathwork foster a shift towards presence and acceptance.
Meditation is another big one.
Absolutely. Meditation strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the part that regulates the stress response, and improves its ability to regulate emotional responses. It acts as a pattern interrupt from rumination.
And mindfulness, is that different from meditation?
They're related but distinct. Mindfulness is presented as a broader lifestyle orientation, consistently bringing your attention intentionally and non-judgmentally to the present moment, observing your internal state without getting swept away by them.
There's also celebration and appreciation listed. How does that work?
This is about actively taking time to genuinely feel gratitude and soak in positive experiences. Neurologically, it's very difficult to feel truly appreciative and simultaneously feel intensely stressed or fearful. The states are somewhat incompatible, so practicing appreciation can be a direct antidote to stress.
What are some of the other maybe less common tools listed for long-term mitigation?
There was a wide array. Simple actions like consciously choosing to smile or laugh, reading or listening to uplifting material. Critically, managing your social environment, consciously choosing to surround yourself with supportive people. Essential oils, used aromatically, and adaptogenic herbs like ashwagandha are mentioned for their potential to modulate cortisol.
Intermittent fasting was on the list too. But didn't we say low blood sugar is a stressor?
Exactly. So the key caveat is that fasting is most effective as a stress management tool when you already have relatively stable blood sugar and good metabolic flexibility. If fasting just makes you feel shaky and irritable, it's likely adding stress, not reducing it.
That's an incredibly comprehensive list. But there's one strategy highlighted as potentially the single most important for long-term stress management. What was that?
Fundamentally changing your viewpoint or perspective. Actively filtering the information you consume, particularly the constant stream of negativity and fear-mongering. But it's also about maintaining a generally relaxed, less reactive viewpoint, recognizing that not every challenge is an immediate existential threat.
Cultivating perspective. And another powerful related strategy is social connection.
Profoundly important. The sources offer a fascinating biological angle beyond just feeling good. It's not just about the occasional release of oxytocin. It seems to be more fundamentally about the serotonin system, which is deeply involved in feelings of well-being, security, and safety.
What happens when we're isolated?
Chronic isolation is linked biologically to elevated levels of a molecule in the brain called tachykinin. When levels are high, it triggers feelings of anxiety, fear, paranoia, and significantly impairs immune function.
Wow, so being isolated literally makes you feel bad and hurts your health biologically.
Think about that. Being chronically isolated can biochemically make you more fearful and suspicious. It's a powerful internal signal that something is wrong with your social environment. Conversely, Engaging in positive, trusting social interactions has been shown to suppress these molecules.
So, connection isn't just nice, it's biologically necessary.
It's arguably a crucial biological imperative for reducing chronic stress, maintaining brain health, and buffering against its negative effects.
Finally, let's briefly touch on supplements, with appropriate caution.
Yes, with the strong caveat that these are optional tools and not primary solutions. Ashwagandha is mentioned for its potential to lower subjective anxiety and blunt cortisol levels. L-theanine, from green tea, for its ability to increase relaxation without drowsiness. But as with any supplement, it is essential to do your own research and consult with a doctor before starting.
And a strong caution was issued about high-dose chronic melatonin use for stress.
Absolutely. While melatonin is involved in sleep cycles, taking high doses long-term can suppress your own pituitary gland's signals to your adrenal glands, which could potentially risk a state that mimics adrenal insufficiency.
That's really important to know. Okay, this brings us full circle. How does all this complex stress physiology connect to the actual feelings we experience day to day?
The sources provide an empowering framework. Emotions aren't just abstract labels. They're fundamentally based on underlying brain-body states. Think about it on two axes. First, how physiologically alert or calm are you? High or low activation? Second, how good or bad does your body feel? Pleasant or unpleasant valence?
Okay, alertness and feeling good.
Cognitive appraisal, how our thinking brain interprets what's happening internally and externally, combines with that raw physical state to produce the specific feeling we label as an emotion. The key insight is that the physiological state itself isn't inherently good or bad, it depends on the label.
So, nervousness before a presentation feels like excitement before a roller coaster.
The core biological response is remarkably similar. The crucial difference is the context and how your brain appraises that state. Are you running from something terrifying, labeled fear, or running towards something thrilling, labeled excitement? The body state might be almost identical initially.
And using these tools we've discussed gives us more conscious control over that underlying state.
Precisely, by understanding these mechanisms and actively using these physiological tools, we gain the ability to consciously influence that underlying body state. It's a way to move beyond just trying to talk yourself into feeling differently, which often doesn't work when you're really stressed.
And it reinforces that so many negative feelings might actually stem from these fundamental physiological imbalances. It's not just in your head.
It's often profoundly in your body. You didn't get enough sleep, your blood sugar is crashing, you've been sitting under fluorescent lights. Using these physiological tools and addressing those foundational lifestyle factors helps directly address those underlying bodily states, which then makes it much easier to manage the resulting emotions and thoughts. Fix the foundation first.
Definitely sobering.
But also, and perhaps most importantly, uncovering a really rich toolkit of actionable strategies. From real-time physiological fixes, like the physiological Sigh, to building tolerance through controlled exposure, and anchoring it all in vital long-term strategies like consistent lifestyle habits, robust nutrition, quality sleep, and social connection.
It's incredibly empowering to realize you have these deeply ingrained hardwired mechanisms within you that are literally designed to help you regulate and control your stress response.
Exactly. It's not about being powerless, it's about learning how to access and skillfully use these internal tools that evolution gave us. Understanding and learning to manage stress effectively is truly foundational.
It's such a key lever for so many other things. So to leave our listeners with a final thought, given that chronic isolation can trigger a specific molecule in your body that makes you more fearful and paranoid, how might understanding that deep biological link reframe the importance you place on actively reaching out to someone you trust this week, especially if it feels difficult right now? Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's given you some valuable tools to think about. Until next time, stay well and take care of yourselves.